The great game for power. In history, there are epochs that brim with intrigue, diplomacy, conquest, and profound cultural exchanges. One such era unfolded between the 7th and 9th centuries CE, a period marked by intense geopolitical maneuvering involving powerful Asian superpowers like China, Indian kingdoms, Tibet, and the emerging Arab Caliphate. These powers clashed, cooperated, and strategically aligned themselves in a complex game of dominance over Central and South Asia. Their goals were multifaceted, encompassing desires for territorial control, safeguarding crucial trade routes, and diplomatic manipulation to achieve strategic gains. Battles were waged, marriages brokered, alliances forged and dissolved, as rulers and generals acted out a real-life Game of Thrones that stretched across vast landscapes from the lush valleys of Kashmir to the arid expanses of the Tarim Basin. In the midst of this, the region of Kashmir emerged as a crucial player, balancing forces, maintaining its sovereignty, and engaging in sophisticated diplomacy. Amidst this kaleidoscopic turmoil, the region's rulers, particularly the dynamic Chandrapida and the valiant Lalitaditya Muktapida, undertook military campaigns and diplomatic missions that shaped the contours of Central and South Asian politics. This complex period was not merely a chronicle of conflict and rivalry, but a crucible for cultural, religious, and commercial exchanges that left an indelible mark on the subsequent history of the regions involved. As we saw at the end of the last section, the Arab Muslims entered this area at the beginning of the 7th century. They seized control over the key locations like Balkh and Tokharistan, where trade routes to China and India branched off, and captured routes connecting the Sindh region and Deval seaport. These strategic maneuvers ultimately paved the way for the military campaign of Lalitaditya. The history of this period shows an intricate dance of diplomacy and battlefield clashes. Between 708 to 711 CE, the campaign of Muhammad bin Qasim over the Sindh region had the principal aim of securing both surface and maritime trade routes. During this turbulent time, Chandrapida Muktapida, the king of Kashmir, made a concerted effort to resist the Arabs. He attempted to form a united front with the rulers of Zabul and Kabul and sought to bring the Chinese into the alliance since their interests were also under threat. The borders of Tokharistan and Balkh were a near anarchy, demanding protection to fend off a potential invasion of Kashmir and other regions. In 713 CE, Chandrapida dispatched an ambassador to the Chinese king Huan Sang of the Tang dynasty. His goal was to involve the Chinese and obtain their military backing. However, having recently assumed power through a revolt, the Tang king could not immediately address these external matters. Chandrapida consequently had to handle the Arab invasions on his own, supported by the rulers of Kabul and Zabul. Later on, Chandrapida did lend military support and supplies to the Chinese in their conflicts with the Tibetans. Many individuals and Hindu-Buddhist rulers in the region between Kabul, Zabul, and Cambodge were present, with Kashmir controlling the trade routes running through these areas. Meanwhile, the Tibetan ruler was aggressively trying to encroach on these routes, forcing Kashmir into the conflict. To recognize Chandrapida's support during the fight with Tibet, the Chinese king sent a delegation to Kashmir in 720 CE to express gratitude, declaring Chandrapida an honorable friend. Chandrapida's reign illustrates an adept diplomatic rule, skillfully leveraging relations with China and the Shahi rulers on the northwest frontier in his battles. His efforts kept Kashmir safe from both Qasim and Tibet. Qasim's conquest of Sindh was brutal, decimating its army on the banks of the Sindh River and executing its king Dahar. However, before he could reach Sindh via Bolan Pass, Qasim faced resistance from the Shahi rulers and Chandrapida, who had formed a united front. In addition to these power plays, incessant conflicts between China and Tibet led to a peace treaty in 707 CE. As a symbol of this treaty, in 710 CE, Chinese princess Jin Sheng married the Tibetan king Mei Agtsom and moved to Tibet. Years later, an urgent message from the prompted king Tegin Zibil of Zabulistan to send a delegation to Hyun Tsang, the Chinese king, who met them in October-November 724. The delegates approached the Chinese king with a request from his daughter, Princess Jin Cheng, who wished to leave Tibet, her husband's homeland, and seek asylum in Kashmir. They told the king that the journey from Tibet to Kashmir takes 7 days, and they shared that Princess Jin Cheng had already sent 2 secret messages to Kashmir. In these messages, she praised the friendship between Kashmir and China. I wish to leave Tibet and take asylum in Kashmir. Will you please accept me? King Tarapida of Kashmir warmly responded, "O Princess, please feel free to come here. We shall lend you any help and cooperation." But the king of Kashmir also recognized potential dangers in this plan. He informed the king of Zabulistan, "The Chinese princess wishes to leave Tibet and seek asylum in my kingdom. However, the Tibetan army may pursue her to stop her from crossing over, and I don't have enough forces to counter them. Therefore, I kindly request military help from the Zabulistan king." Though Princess Jin Cheng expressed a desire to take asylum in Kashmir, uncertainty surrounds whether she actually made it there. No source provides clear information on this matter, and even Kalhana's Rajatarangini is silent on the subject. He doesn't mention this event or the visits of the Chinese delegation to the royal court of Kashmir at all. At this time, China and Tibet were striving to solidify their influence in Central Asia to gain control over trade routes. Though Tibet eventually prevailed, their rivalry persisted for a long time. Tibet, preoccupied with military pursuits, eyed not only Nepal but also its immediate southern neighbors Magadh and Madhya Desh. In 731 CE, King Yashovarman of Kannauj dispatched his minister Sinhagupta to the Chinese court. While it's unclear if this envoy sought help against the Tibetan invasion that had reached Madhya Desh, Yashovarman likely took precautionary measures considering the possibility of a Tibetan attack. This struggle between Tibet and China posed a significant risk to India. Not only were routes to India via Tibet in jeopardy, but Tibet was actively raiding Bengal and Bihar. This wasn't a new threat. King Rajasinha in the south had previously sent a delegate to the Chinese court to warn of Tibetan aggression. Records confirm that Rajsinha had alerted China to the potential dangers from Tibetan forces. There had even been invasions by Tibet into Madhya Desh and Bihar in the 7th century, spurred by a Chinese diplomat. To summarize, without permanently restraining Tibet, controlling Gilgit-Baltistan and the trade routes to India through Ladakh was an unachievable task. Though Tibet never attacked Kashmir, the threat to North India was real. The danger was not only from Tibetan offensives, but also from them controlling the routes to China. Yashovarman likely felt this threat at his doorsteps, prompting him to send an ambassador to the Chinese court after concluding the war with the Arabs. However, China did not come to his aid. When Lalitaditya Muktapida returned from conquering Tokharistan and Dardistan, he took matters into his own hands. He attacked Tibet through Leh to free the route passing through Nepal and assisted Yashovarman. Lalitaditya's march began from Kashgar. He likely moved through Mintaka Pass to Gilgit, an area then known as Little Bolur. After taking control of Gilgit, he advanced towards Skardu, referred to as Greater Bolur at that time. By securing the Skardu-Yarkand route, he opened up another vital pathway. He continued to Kargil, freeing Zojila Pass from Tibetan forces, and then marched towards Leh, securing two more critical routes. In 733 CE, 2 years after Yashovarman's envoy was sent, Lalitaditya dispatched his own envoy to the Chinese court. He offered strategic assistance and informed them that he had freed 5 trade routes from Tibetan occupation. Despite Lalitaditya's offer of help and the alignment with China's interests, China did not act quickly. It wasn't until 737 CE that China entered the Gilgit region against Tibet. Aggressiveness emerged in China's approach after the Tang Emperor delegated all authority to Li Linfu. However, his choice to appoint Korean commanders instead of Chinese ones led to internal unrest. The responsibility to keep Tibetan expansionism in check fell solely on Lalitaditya's shoulders during this time. Tibet sought other ways to regain strength. To foster better relations with Gilgit, Tibet offered its princess, Kri Ma Lod, in marriage to Sushilisi, a pro-Tibet king of Gilgit. At least until 737 CE, this means that Tibet's control over Gilgit had significantly weakened. Their attempts to regain it through diplomatic marriages did not seem to help. Meanwhile, China struggled with its internal problems. Even the formal political delegations received at its court were sent back with nothing more than nominal certificates and declarations. The underlying tensions and strategic maneuvers during this period highlight the complex and fraught nature of relations between these powers. After 750 CE, Tibet aligned itself with the Abbasid Caliphate, beginning to pose a significant challenge to the Tang Empire. This escalation culminated in a war between the Arab and Chinese forces in the Talas River Valley north of Tokharistan in 751 CE. The focus of this war was the region surrounding the Sir Darya River. Today, the Talas River flows through Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. The fighting went on for several days, with China facing complete defeat due to the betrayal of certain Turkish tribes. This loss cost China control over the Tarim Basin, especially as they had to contend with the Lushan revolt back home. Local vassals of the Tang dynasty either declared independence or sided with the Arab forces. It's believed that the Islamization of Turks began after this war. Simultaneously, Tibet faced internal challenges, including various epidemics. The struggles between China and Tibet, which had started in 740 CE, continued until 756 CE. During this period, in 755 CE, Tibet's King Mi Angstorm died, and his son, Trisong Detsun, ascended to power. A staunch supporter of Buddhism, Trisong Detsun's rule saw the construction of viharas and stupas as he invited many Indian scholars to Tibet. China, meanwhile, was consumed with internal revolt, and Tibet shifted away from its aggressive policy. Central Asian tribal states suddenly became unruly, posing problems to trade caravans and hindering trade activities. Lalitaditya sought to exploit the chaos in Central Asia to assert his control and embarked on a campaign in the Tarim Basin during 755 to 56. However, this mission didn't succeed for Kashmir, as Lalitaditya never returned, and no information about his ventures in the region is available. Kalhana's account of this campaign in the Rajatarangini remains vague due to the lack of concrete details. Following the fall of the Tang dynasty, Chinese records contain few references to India, except for mentions of Buddhist monks' visits. Indian records similarly provide scarce details on the trade activity between China and the rest of the world, including India. Despite these political disruptions, trade between the East and West persisted in the 9th century within the framework of the Uyghur Empire. Until 840 CE, this empire extended across northern Central Asia, and there were enormous exchanges of silk for horses with China. Chinese sources of the time refer to caravans of Sogdians traveling to Upper Mongolia, playing significant religious and cultural roles. Information provided by Muslim geographers of the 10th century about Eastern Asia is traced back to Sogdian data from 750 to 840 CE, revealing enduring connections between the East and the West. However, with the decline of the Uyghur Empire, the Sogdian trade faced a crisis. What emerged primarily from Muslim Central Asia was the trade of the Samanids, resuming the northwestern route to the Khazars and the Urals, and the northeastern path toward nearby Turkic tribes. This marked the end of an era that shaped the future of Asia.